Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Roots2Suits podcast. The podcast aimed at highlighting the unique individuals that make up the global cannabis space. My name is Jameson Welbourn, and I'm joined by my brother and co-host, Graydon Welbourn. And in today's episode, we have Addison DeMoura, founder and CEO of 800 Pound Mantra, a full-service consulting and management company that works with groups like Chiba Chews and Grand Flora, and also the creator of the Pyramid Pipeline, which focuses exclusively on the optimization of the solvent sector in California. So without further ado, Addison, please welcome to the show.
What's up? How's it going, guys?
How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, Addison. Thanks for coming.
What's up, Graydon? Nice to see you, bud.
Happy to have you here, man. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
So,
as you can see, it's sunny in California. So.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah, super jealous right now.
So before we jump into 800 Pounds Mantra, Legends of Fashion, all the interesting work you're doing currently, we like to take a little bit of a look back. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, where you came up, where you're from?
Yeah. So I'm a dirty Portuguese kid from southern Massachusetts who grew up, was born in Taunton, grew up a little bit of time in Swansea, Bedford, and eventually settled into Newton, Mass, which is in Boston there. So grew up on the East Coast, and then around 1998 came to California. 2008 we started Steep Hill. Between 98 and 2008, I worked in transport, distribution, production here in California in the medical cannabis industry. Was doing a lot of production and running, mostly moving product around, but doing a lot of production of my own, and then moving other stuff. So I had a relationship with a lot of dispensaries at the time. Made good friends with Etienne at BPG and Debbie Goldsberry, and so I had a lot of ties in with a bunch of activism or activists that were actually the owners of the dispensaries that we sold to. And then did that till 2008, and then in 2008, just really, things got really aggressive in California. It was a lot of raids. Bush was in office. It was just crazy shit going on at that time. So my business partner and I were like, he had a big farm. We've been, doing a lot of work, and just said, you know what, let's minimize our liability and all these things if we can. And then the idea for the testing lab came up. We were both on the board at the Medical Cannabis Association, and we came up with that concept. And then, unfortunately, the MCA didn't really have the funds to make the project move forward. So my business partner.
Let's take it back a little bit, Addison, because I think you're jumping ahead, and a lot of people can talk about what it was like living during those times, because they read, in the newspaper what was happening. And I think what I want people to realize is you were actually living in the thick of it. And so, what I know from our relationship is, you had a brief stint in the snowboarding industry, and you were able to travel around and build quite a network. But eventually, you found your way out to California, and ultimately started the Oakdale Natural Choice Collective.
Yep. Started the dispensary.
Yeah, I think that's can you talk to us a little bit about how what you were doing snowboarding and how that led you to Cali? I think is a good way to start.
Yeah, so I was in Colorado. I was doing a lot of snowboarding there, and just kind of got into it and was good at it. So would go up and ride all the time, and then was able to ride on some sketchy shit and do well. So I think it was kind of I was calm enough to do that, and I think people took attention to it, and I was eventually got onto a flow ride team for Rosignol with Ron Craig, who was the rep that was in Northern California that was doing that stuff. Ron eventually introduced me to Christine, who was the team manager for Rosignol at the time. I never made it into like the pro. I was a small like a flow rider that then went into they were like, okay, let's do competition, let's do all these things, and I was just like, I make more money selling fucking weed than I can live this whole life and do this, and I would.
So were you boarding and selling weed, Addison, at the same time?
Oh yeah,
life for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. How did those worlds like intertwine, or did you keep them really separate, or?
No, they intertwined magically. Actually, if you look at it, like a lot of snowboard culture is way into cannabis. And the only guys that you saw on the mountain that weren't smoking weed were like skiers and shit. So every trail you went down, there was a little hut and you fucking smoked weed in there. And so it's kind of real strong in the culture of cannabis. So For me, it was perfect. And then when I got to California, I dabbled a bit into trying to kind of get into that world and be this like pro snowboard guy. And then I just quickly learned that like we make more money in weed. If you're into snowboarding and you love it and you want to travel and you want to be in that life, it's a pretty broke ass life. It's not you can't even afford the weed really. And it was I'd go on some trips and do some stuff, and I'd be like I'm not staying at the fucking Motel 6. I'm gonna be over here, the nice spot. So I kind of realized that like the two meet really well, but mostly just on the selling weed to the snowboard industry. So I sort of transitioned into doing sales in surf skate snow. Went on and started to work for Rosignol, and then eventually went and got a job working for Santa Cruz skateboards, surf and snow.
Sorry, Addison. Let me just jump in here. When you said you were doing sales, like what type of stuff were you selling? Like were you selling boarding equipment or?
Yeah. So initially when they brought me in, I did all promotions. So they were like, oh, we got a rider, an ex-rider here who can stoke people out. So they just brought me into like I was like a good times guy. I was able to just go visit shops, bring promo material, stoke kids out with boards, do snow demos at Squaw and all the mountains, Kirkwood, and just did that stuff for the company. Did a lot of promotion stuff. So you're getting, and they took really good care of us. They gave us a vehicle, so I had a full four-wheel drive van, Rosignol, dialed out. And then Santa Cruz and those guys were I was working for Terry Campy in Santa Cruz, and he was hooking me up. He had DC and 686 brands, so I was able to rep and work promotion for those brands as well. So it was a really nice group. And then Terry's really close with Kenny Collins, Skin Dog at Volcom. Kenny was still is a big wave surfer for Volcom, but also the Northern California rep. So him and his wife Anushka, they were nice enough to let me come on and work with those guys with Volcom Snow for the clothing line. So I had a nice gig, and it was like I realized quickly, like, hey, I can snowboard whenever I want. I can sell weed and make more money, and I could be in the same fucking room. I could still go to the Trans World Awards. I could still go and do all this shit. Go to all the trade shows and be with everybody, and make a lot more fucking money. And then what it really did was it helped me understand that like cannabis really pushes sales. So when I was doing DC and I was visiting shops, as I transitioned from promotion into supporting sales, because most of the time then, if you're doing promotion, you're going in and stoking people out, and you do an inventory, see what they have, report that back to the reps themselves. And then next time around, when the rep comes in, he knows what to pitch, what to sell. So it was a great fucking job. Made had a salary, had commission, had budgets for stuff. And it was just every other promotions guy knew you could just trade shit, and I had the cannabis stuff. So it was just perfect. I had a nice little 2-bedroom spot, and I think I told you before, Jameson, I was like sleeping on the couch, had both rooms blown up. Have my buddy watch it when I was traveling, and it was just weed that I'd be able to take. Say for instance with DC, I'd go and eventually started helping with the sales. So I'd go show the samples skate shop. So I'd have maybe 2 weeks of just the brand new samples just came in from ASR, and we'd hit the road and go visit all the shops and show them. I would just bring a bunch of eighths with me. And I'd show the shoes, and I'd have my backpack there, and it would fucking reek. And they'd be like, you'd be in a skate shop. And they'd be like, dude, what's that smell? And I'd be like, oh, that's your prize after you put an order in today. So it was like, I was able to really get it. And my boss would be like, how the fuck are you getting these orders? Like, how? So we, the two met really well. They worked super great together. It allowed me to get a strong understanding of marketing, sales, and promotion. Because when we started Steep Hill, I did all of the sales, marketing, and promotion for the company, all the branding and stuff. So it was really helpful. It helped me learn a lot of stuff that I needed, and it even helped me learn a lot of stuff that I do now, like with Pipeline. We're building a full sales and promotion team for Pipeline, and we're modeling it after Volcom. So that it has that real crazy high energy Volcom feel to it. Never know what now I see on Instagram they're like never let them know your next move. Like that's been Volcom's jam out with your clam out for fucking years. That's been their motto. So with Pipeline we created what's called the Wolves of Wall Street, which is our sales team for Pipeline. So we're going to bang out and promote that sales team pretty strongly, but then also kind of bring it into the culture, have a good time with it, and use it as a product to market, essentially. So the most of the marketing you'll see from Pipeline will be marketing that sales team and the fun you can have around it. And think like, like Anchorman, like we're kind of looking to create this very energetic, funny, unpredictable, disruptive kind of sales team that will sell for the farm directly, and then also work directly with us here while we're bringing in new genetics. And another big component to it, though, and Volcom did a really great job on this. They had their team. So they had their snow team, they had their skate team, they had their surf team. And then what we want to try to do here is kind of bring in that sort of feeling as well. So we'll have our sales team, but then we'll also be able to do promotion and keep everything kind of moving with that too. So just add a little bit of what we learned in surf, skate, snow, and in that industry, the disciplines, some of the things that apply there. And then the idea is to create a large media offering as well. So what's unique about Pipeline, and I'll just kind of jump into that a little bit. The whole build out of Pipeline is to also allow us to create content. So from selection at the farm to propagation to selection into when that material goes into tissue culture, and then the tissue culture goes over to the nursery. We're going to capture all of this strain specifically, so that then when we sell you the fresh frozen, you'll be able to get a media package that comes with it. And with that media package, now you'll have a bunch of digital media that's of course branded Pipeline, but open for them to anyone who purchases, say, the papaya punch. Then they're able to go, oh, by the way, here's your invoice for everything. But then here's the digital package as well, so you guys can promote this thing. And the Trojan horse in there is obviously Pipeline, and getting them. If we give them great content that's edited, that they can then use to promote the brand with and promote the strain essentially. We kind of feel like that's more of the whole package. So we're building a large sales team, media capture, have our own studio set up.
I think that I have some insight on what you've accomplished over your career, and what might have felt like at the time stumbling through some things really was just a preparation for building what I think you're about to build. And I definitely want to get into that in a lot more detail a little later. But I want to pull you back and talk a little bit about the Oak Hill Natural Choice Collective, because I feel like that's a really important story. It might not be the funnest thing for you to talk about, but I feel like it's an important part of your journey. And talk to us a little bit about coming to California, and what was the tipping point or the inspiration to start this collective?
Yeah, it was, back then, I think my whole mentality was more like, people would always say, oh, it's the nail that sticks up that gets hammered down. That's the nail that gets hammered. My mentality was, that's the nail that you catch your ass on. That catches your ass. That's the nail. That's the nail of change, actually, because that can spark something else. So I've always had a very disruptive approach to everything for that reason. And I was, it says on my social media that I was raised by wild salespeople, and that's kind of a joke towards, like, I'm the youngest of 7 kids, and I had zero supervision growing up, like none at all. That's why I ended up this way. It's very, like, oh, well, if that person's doing it, then I can fucking do that. There's no boundary on what I thought I could do. So, and that even came to activism, So one morning I woke up, I was living in Modesto, and I was, working, supplying a lot of material to a dispensary that had been raided. And, because I had a great network set up from running around the whole state. And after that dispensary was raided, there was a lot of fallout in the area. Politically, publicly, there's a lot of stuff going on because it was a long, drawn-out trial and a long case. DEA got involved, and it was a dispensary that was very successful, doing really good numbers. People loved it. It was providing safe access to a lot of people in the valley. And at that time, there was no dispensaries in the valley. They were only in the Bay Area. So you're talking an hour and 20 minutes out. So everyone from where I lived had to go an hour and 20 minutes out. And there was maybe 6 or 7 that you'd get into. But these guys went ahead and said, fuck you, we're going to open one here. They legally did it. They were crushing it. The city came to try to get them to close down, and they couldn't. So then they used some land use laws and made a play at them with using land use laws to get them kicked out, and couldn't. And then once that happened, they took that case and all the information and just handed it off to the DEA and said, hey, these guys are breaking federal law. So the DEA came in, raided them. So it caused a big blow up in that area, publicly, politically. So you had multiple newspapers, people reporting on it. And I woke up one morning, and I was actually living in Oakdale, and I woke up and I look at the paper, and it's like, oh, Oakdale, it was almost like Oakdale being like, we're the only county that doesn't have a ban on cannabis. And I was like, oh, well, that's an opportunity, knowing the law. So within, I think I grabbed my keys and fucking drove down to the city hall and said, oh, I want to put on a business application. And they're like, what is it? And I was like, oh, it's a, natural businesses, like natural medicine or something. I don't know what the fuck I said. But they're like, okay. And I went and got my business license. But that afternoon, I went and looked at some spots and found a location. By doing this, you were really just like, you would have to be out of your fucking mind to do this at the time, because there were no dispensaries. There was nothing in that area anymore. They just came down hard with the DA on the one that was there.
Bush is in office.
Yeah, Bush is in office. They're raiding everybody. It's just nuts at that point. So it was kind of, I'm glad I did it at the same time. But it was ended up being 6 years of fighting, 6 years of, and 2 raids, 6 years of fighting. When they raided my house initially, the SWAT team came in, and luckily for me, I looked and saw this cop at my front door. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? And then I see behind him a SWAT team. And I'm like, oh, I know what you're doing. So I just opened the door, hands behind the back, and just knelt down. He pushed me on the ground. And then as the officers came in the door, some of them actually poked me in the back with the barrel of the rifle. So because they did that, you can't touch someone with you can't even point a gun at somebody. But if you touch someone with a gun, that's considered battery. I got arrested. They raided my house. They raided a bunch of the employees. And then they released us, obviously, got it on bail, went immediately to an attorney. And in the interview with the attorney, she was like, were you harmed at all? And I said, no, nothing bad. I just took my shirt off and showed her. And she's like, Jesus fucking Christ, So she took pictures of all of these circular marks on my back where they had jammed me with the gun. It was either one guy jammed me multiple times, or they were just jamming me as they came in the door. So that ended up kind of being the secret to the whole thing, because they didn't know that we had these photographs. And I don't even think their superiors knew that these cops had actually violated the situation that way. So fast forward 6 years later, and what had happened was first it was a state case that we had there. We fought the state case. The judge dismissed the state case based on law enforcement negligence. And what was great about that is that right after the kid, I was a very disruptive person. Right after it all happened, and I left that lawyer's office, I went home and researched how to sue the city and the state. And I researched it and found out that you could name every law enforcement officer. You could name whoever the fuck you wanted. And it was actually smart to do that, because then they weren't able to hide behind other things. So I named the law enforcement division. I named different law enforcement that was involved in the raid. And I named each of these guys individually, and just went nuts and said, all right, I'm fucking suing all you guys, And then when the judge dismissed the case based on law enforcement negligence, it immediately made these cops all liable in the civil case. So fast forward now another 2 years, and we're in court. What they do here is they'll do a summary of judgment. And what that is they'll get the judge who's ruled on the case up to that point to then hand the case over to another judge. And they'll typically take a judge who's a totally different judge, who's going to now not allow any of your shit. And this is what they were doing. And they were in the process of doing in this. And the judge that we had was like, look, you should plea out, because if you don't, you're going to lose all this ground that you had. And it should be illegal to do this anyway. It's more or less just engineering your case in a way so that they could take advantage of you. So luckily for us, at that day, we're sitting in there, and my lawyer's like, you know what? I want to show you some photos. She broke those photos out, showed them to the judge, and the judge was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. So the judge calls in all the police officers, and she's like, so ready to take it to the next step here? And Mr. DeMoura is not going to plead anything. And I want you guys to take a look at these. And she hands out these photos, and these cops are sitting there, and they go from like, big badass motherfuckers to like, fuck, they're like, oh, and their lawyer literally is turning to them being like, why did you not say anything about this? Why did you not say anything about this? And it's like, we're going to admit it. And it just fucking turned into like, oh, okay. So what it ended up happening was they had to pay us. We won a settlement with them. They had to pay us. And I've been charged 7 times, but never convicted of a crime in my entire life. So luckily I was able to, pay close enough attention to the legal system and how it works. And, I never give an interview. I never, I'm like the hardest person to deal with in any of those situations. And I just turn it to humor and start making fun of them and fucking with them. So, was just really successful in that sense and being real resilient to them. And we beat them. So after 6 years, the whole entire case went away. And then the great thing about it is that we were able to set precedents in that county. And right after that, dispensaries opened. Everybody had a right to do what they needed to do. And, there was a funny story about maybe 2.5, 3 weeks after everything settled. And I was driving through Oakdale and I got pulled over by 2 officers. And I'm like, okay, now something's up, right? And they come to the car and he's like, and they're like both sides of the car. They fucking come up, roll your windows down, all this shit. I'm like, okay, whatever. And they take my license and they do all this shit, right? And take my license, and the guy comes back within like 20 seconds, man. He just comes back. Sorry, Mr. DeMoura, have a good day. And it was like, they realized like, oh, they were going to try something, but I think they realized like, we just got our ass fucking handed to us by this guy. And, he knows his shit. He's got lawyers. He's got all these things behind him. And what I was lucky to have is that all that vending with all of those dispensaries who were the largest activists in the state at the time, when I got picked up, they all came to my defense, and I had Ed Rosenthal and, Ed Rosenthal's fund was supporting us with our lawyers. And we had Ian Vizzi at, Pier 1, which is, one of the best law firms in San Francisco. And so we had a lot of these guys came out of the woodwork because they saw the injustice here and they wanted to help us. So luckily we were able to win the case. And that sort of catapulted me during that period of time, that 6 years is when we, right after I got arrested and released is when we started Steep Hill. So during the period of launching Steep Hill, I was being prosecuted for this case.
Oh, wow.
So after
that had waited, like, was it Ed that introduced you to David Lampak, your future business partner?
No, it was actually an attorney in Oakland that introduced us, Rob Raich. So Rob Raich was David's attorney. He was also one of my attorneys. And when I got raided, he's like, hey, look, I got a job for you. Come to Oakland. You could be the head of the Medical Cannabis Association. We'll put you right in the spotlight and we'll raise awareness around your case at the same time. And that was just sort of, where we were at with the whole thing. So I went in and, had the support of a bunch of those great people. And, luckily that group of people, Debbie Goldsberry, Etienne, Steve D'Angelo, Dress, from Harborside, all these really good people, Jeff Jones, Todd McCormick, a lot of those real yippie but activist guys that were there in Oakland at the time became good friends and they supported us. And then when we brought Steep Hill to the table, it's like I always say that Steep Hill was kind of like someone bringing a ruler into a room of growers so they could measure their dicks. It was like, here, boys, for the first time ever, here's your ability to see how much THC is in that actual THC percentage, dry weight percentage of THC in your sample compared to, you'd have Mendo, it'd be a road of, 50 farmers. And now every farmer could actually compare themselves to one another and every dispensary could qualify, how much THC is in a product. And, once we did this and we launched Steep Hill and we had potency testing on the bar, Harborside had a 75% increase in hash sales. And the reason is if you were walking up to the bar before, you'd see your grams of flour and they were $16 to $22 a gram. But then you see your grams of hash and some of them might be $10. Well, once you put the potency on there and you saw that a gram of flour has 160 milligrams per gram, but a $10 gram of hash has 540 grams of THC or milligrams of THC, that's when it kind of turned people's head on them. They said, oh, fuck, man, like there's way more milligrams in this stuff. And then they take the hash and put it in the joint and get a better effect. So we were able to kind of work with all these great people. Dispensaries opened their doors to us because they saw the case and they knew what we were doing. And so it was kind of serendipitous that it all kind of came together. But again, like, I think a lot of people would have gave up. I think a lot of people would have been like, this is too much. Because I didn't only have one thing on my plate. I had 2 major things on my plate. Then I had my personal life. I look back at all this and I'm like, I don't know how the fuck I made it. But at the same time, I understand now how well equipped I am for the industry and how, it's like water off a duck's back for a lot of fucking things. And, so building pipeline, building these other things, building 800, they're all really by our design, you know, and it's our understanding of the industry and what we know that's kind of afforded us the ability to do it. So, you know, you suffer your ass off and get the shit kicked out of you. And, you know, that all happens to you. And then you eventually get stronger and you just realize, like, wait a second, you know, there's nothing that I can't fucking do, right? There's nothing that's going to be worse than the second time they raided me for the same case, right? Yeah. You know, there's nothing worse than 6 fucking years of this trial and this case and launching a business at the same time that you don't know is going to be successful or not. So it was a lot of fucking challenges and just a lot of, like, I don't even understand how it is, but I just kept going and just kept doing it until got to the point where, you know, it was a success and the company was doing really well and growing very well. And unfortunately, my business partner at Steep Hill, you know, took a little power trip and fired me from the company. I might have threatened to murder him. I'm not sure what happened. There was a couple of different occasions when I wanted to fucking choke him out. And I've had my issues with that. You know, I have 2 older brothers, so I kind of, when I was younger, they would just be like, hey, you know, if you don't like something, just punch someone in the face. And so it wasn't the best advice ever, and it got me in a lot of trouble. But, you know, luckily I never put hands on David, my business partner. But there were a few times where I think he was pretty close to shitting his pants and, you know, having a situation. So I think it was, the straw that broke the camel's back was possibly an argument that we had. And then he fired me from the tarmac as he was heading out to vacation with his family to Israel for a month. So he made himself gone and fired me from the company. Luckily for me, the people at the company that were there still saw me as the founder and were like, so there's about a month of limbo where I was able to sort of orchestrate my exit in a way that would make much more sense. So when I left Steep Hill, I planned to go work with the guys at what was it? It was a group.
Can I jump in real quick, Addison?
Yeah,
I just have a question I've been dying to ask, but I didn't want to interrupt you there. But how did you come up with the idea for Steep Hill while you're in the midst of this huge, like, court case? Obviously, probably taking up most of your time. How did you think, like, A, I want to start a new business, and B, how did you come up with the idea?
So it was David and I were, like I said, we were introduced by Rob Raich, who's an attorney that had built and put together an organization called the Medical Cannabis Association. And their big dream was to help introduce standards to the medical cannabis industry and help standardize a lot of things, you know, and you know, organize and standardize and kind of bring things to light. Excuse me. So for Dave and I, we had it where we were kind of tasked with figuring out how to generate revenue for this organization. It's kind of tough right now, you know, and Bush is raiding people. Everything's fucking crazy. So the idea came up of, like, well, shit, you know, what if we started testing cannabis to prove its efficacy, to prove its safety, because that would be, I mean, here I am in a court case fighting the cops, and I'm watching on TV the sheriff in Modesto where I'm at, Christensen's in Stanislaus County, and he's coming up, and this is the kind of guy who's, like, literally, like, press conference, oh yeah, marijuana kills brain cells, like, just regurgitating some of the oldest, stupidest fucking things that didn't make any sense. So I think what it was by having this asshole talk about all this shit, it sparked in my head, like, well, how do you shut that asshole up? And this guy one day was like, oh, well, you know, we have a strong feeling that this medical marijuana is getting laced and that's going to get into the hands of kids. And I was just like, no, I've, you know, sold drugs most of my life. You typically don't lace the low end drugs with the high end drugs and charge the low end price. Like, so you're out of your fucking mind. Like, you know, you're not going to buy a bag of weed and there's a bag of cocaine stapled to it for good luck. Like, that's not how the fuck it works. And, or even sprinkled in it to booby trap you to get addicted to cocaine and to buy more. Like, I don't even fucking understand the theory, but it was in that thought that it was like, oh, what you do is you test cannabis and prove to this fucking asshole that out of 100 samples, none of them had anything in it but THC. So that was kind of that was sort of like, again, it was like the, oh, fuck this guy, that drove me to be like, how do you overcome this obstacle? And that was,
it reminds me of when you saw the thing in the paper, you, like, recognized a little gap in the market and saw the opportunity and jumped at it.
I've always been a weirdo who's like ran toward fucked up shit as opposed to kind of run away from it. Like that fight or flight for me is like, it's always fight. It's never been, I had to learn the flight part of it to kind of back the fuck out and learn to play my cards a little differently. So luckily for me, I was just really crazy when I was younger, and you know, I'm 48 now. So it's like, I still have that in me, but it's more business driven. It's more like, oh, if you think it's impossible and they think it's impossible, let's take this whole fucking thing apart. And that's what led us to Pipeline. You know, Kevin and I were here, and we're, you know, trying to find ways to subsidize our income here at 800 and recognize that, like, okay, there's a clever way to consult the farms on getting their material sold to the makers. We know all the makers. We're so integrated into the hash culture that we know all the makers. So it was like, hey, so we started to get these lists and started to look into the whole fresh frozen market and see how it worked. And the whole thing was just fucked, like ethically fucked, you know, back office fucked, like everything about it was just really scattered. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, this is a supply chain and it has no structure to it whatsoever. So we just took it, cleaned it up, and figured out, you know, from the beginning to the end, how do you solve all of these problems? And then how do you solve the problems, but then also make it so that, you know, how the cannabis industry is, you have a great idea, you put it out there, and then 2 weeks later, your mom and her friend are ready to rip you off and fucking sell the idea to someone else. So, you know, there's a component in Pipeline that makes it where it's really tough to steal. It's really tough because you're going to have to supersede our relationship with the breeders. Then you're going to have to supersede our relationship with the selection team that we have in the farm. Then you're going to have to supersede our production team, which is 130 acres of production plus. Then you're going to have to supersede our relationships that we have with the makers. And then that's where the idea for Pipeline, you know, that's where the idea for Wolves of Wall Street came up, where it was like, well, let's add another component that really shows force and strength in sales, because that's the real fucking banger here. Like, you could have all this put together, but then not have that sales team that's necessary to speak the language, you know, and to really be able to communicate and deliver something to these makers so that it's a no-brainer. Like, that's
Can you talk a little bit about this design of the sales team? Like, I personally am not aware of what Volcom did and what you were alluding to earlier. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
So Volcom's approach was like the funky uncle. You know, Volcom's approach was like, you know, at every family event, as organized as it may be, there's an uncle that comes in that everyone loves, that gives out a bunch of weed, smokes weed out back, fucking, you know, just cracks the jokes, doesn't give a fuck, rolls up in the nice car, farts, fucking bam, high fives everyone, kisses a few babies, and fucking leaves. And then they're like, oh, fucking uncle whoever is the greatest, you know? And that's like, that was Volcom's whole approach, is like disrupt, draw attention, and show everybody that fun times are really where it's at. Like, they have a very strong back office and a very strong business acumen, but then put a bunch of wild wolves out in front who understood that back office and that business acumen, and their job is good times, fun, you know, always poke into the good times, the fun, the positivity, the motivation, all the stuff that it takes. You know, surfers, like, if you look at surfers, like, they wake up early, they paddle out early, they get into cold water, they do all these things, but it's a tribe. So Volcom's a very tribal kind of approach to things that was very market driven and marketing driven. And it's just, I haven't seen that in cannabis. I've seen guys try, but, you know, and I'm probably giving away more at this point to some people, but I think that those big companies that have the ability to do what I'm talking about, they're not brave enough to do this, because their numbers guy is going to tell them, oh, no, we'll be spending too much money on that. And it goes back to what I always tell people is like, culture will eat strategy for fucking breakfast every single day. Don't ever think it won't. It always does. It always has, and it always will. Culture does not give a fuck. Culture will take you know, like, that's fashion, is culture coming back and slapping you in the face again. And like, you look now and every girl's in like high-waisted jeans and white fucking sneakers, and it's all 80s again. And it's, you know, whoever owns the brand that didn't go away gets to win again, right? So but a strategist in a company would be very cutthroat and very numbers driven, where Volcom had that component, but then tricked you into thinking that when you handed your order off, you didn't know if your rep was even going to live long enough to get it delivered into the company. And there was something about that made it so exciting and fucking rad. And like, that's what we're doing here. It's like, we're going to build a sales team where our sales guys can fucking out dab anybody. They know what's on the market. They're traveling to glass shows. They're a part of this. They're doing their own selection at home. I mean, that's really what it takes, because the next step to that is, you know, all this is important, right? Because this is the interface, but then the second half of it is the actual infrastructure itself, you know, and getting into like, you know, that's where the idea came up about designing a very specific bag just for fresh frozen, so that when the idea didn't come out of from the beginning. It didn't come out of like, oh, well, we'll protect the material, which would protect the farmer. We'll protect the material, which would protect the transport. We protect the material, which protects the end maker, the manufacturer that's going to get it. You know, we didn't think that. We were actually just thinking like, oh, you know what would be cool is if when the maker got this bag, they look at the bag and go, what the fuck is this? And then they open it up and look and see how well the material is protected because of how the bag's designed. And they just go, oh, this is fucking genius, dude. I'm going to get a better yield because this material was treated better. You know, if you take a turkey bag and put material into it and tie that bag or fold that bag or do anything, you're building now a shield, you know, a hardened, crusted shield around the edge where that bag interfaces with the material. The trichomes can stick to the bag. There's all these things that can happen there. Whereas if you design a square bag with something that holds the material in the center, then around the sides of it, it's all naturally, you know, has all these porous positioning and all these things in there, which you need so that when you put that material into the ice, it's gonna release a lot better. You're gonna get a lot less energy is gonna have to go into just gently getting these trichomes to go where you want. So when we look at everything, it's always about like a gun to a knife fight approach to it. Because that's what your uncle did. Your uncle showed up in a fucking Ferrari. He fucking was wearing the dopest sneakers. He had the fire weed. He fucking made out with, you know, someone else's girlfriend and fucking bounced out of there. And you're like, God damn it, I want to be that guy. Yeah. And that's kind of what the idea is to embed within the whole picture, good times. Yeah. And that's why we love 710. We love Real Deal. We love these brands that get it, that deliver a little more to it, that make you think a bit. And then they also bring you into a tribe. They bring you into a group. So when you start kind of talking about Web3 and you start talking about Discord and these other things, they all really start to tighten up that whole picture a lot. And I think, you know, within the next 5 years in our industry, we're going to see a huge migration from Instagram. And that's because of Instagram's policies and what they're doing. And you're going to see a lot more on Twitter, which is kind of, cannabis industry really isn't on Twitter very much, which doesn't make sense to me because that's the most welcoming place for it. So the job now is to use some of these tools to direct people to, you know, Discord for the community component, Twitter for posting and letting people see stuff, and getting away from Instagram. And like right now, I mean, I'm even, you know, Jameson knows I'm like on my dog's Instagram account because some predatory programmer who's been trying to sell us, you know, this like service to get our accounts verified and shit, went and took down some accounts and then hits me up on Saturday like, oh, I can get your accounts back. And it's like, oh, I know what happened now. So it's like there's this predatory component on Instagram that's unregulated, that's just insane. And, you know, we're trying to get away from some of that stuff, but build a broader, bigger picture where you can tell a story, you can interface with the customer, and you can interface as well with, you know, Pipeline isn't built to interface with the consumer, right? So I wanted to add a component where Pipeline could interface with the consumer, where the consumer could have a Wolves of Wall Street shirt, the consumer could have, you know, a repost of a video that's from that part of the company, and be able to be like, oh, these dudes are crazy. Like, look at this fucking ragtag pack of goofballs that are murking this game, that are doing this shit, and build that up. And almost like the Stern show, you know, Howard Stern, make each one of them an individual that could be appreciated, that could be recognized. It doesn't take anything else away from the company. It draws more in. So it's kind of, that's our approach to it, is to open it up. Everything we do in Pipeline is open source. It's completely open for everybody. The idea is to get genetics in, get them into a nursery, and then those genetics get sold to everybody. You want to corner the market, try it, because there's more genetics coming. Yeah. And that's kind of what makes it where we all know you could right now, you could name 50 fucking breeders that are hash specific that are here. You can name the strains that they have that are in, but then it gets into like, oh, well, Moonbelt's 112, you're not going to get that. And you're not going to get the pheno of this. So it protects the breeder, but when things do get out, they're best if they're out, as far as I'm concerned. You know, I'm bummed out that everybody wants to try to protect fucking genetics like it's 1992. It's like,
as long as the material is out and it's representing the breeder in a positive way, it's good to get it out. The issue happens when the material doesn't represent the breeder in a positive way, and then you know, people's feelings get hurt.
That's the thing. It's like if there were a way to take a concentrate and pull a genetic sample from the concentrate and make a strain from that, like to actually, like you can do with a lablet from, because you could go to a dispensary and you could buy dried flower and you could take that shit and, you know, put that leaf into agar, and you could have a lablet of that strain. You could create it.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way to do that for concentrates. But I think what we're trying to do with Pipeline is help breeders understand your job is to breed. And if you're breeding and you're constantly breeding and you're staying on your toes, you're going to have more genetics behind what you're doing. You're going to have collaborative projects and other things behind what you're doing. And what you're going to need to sell those is promotion. Pipeline is promotion. You don't have to give us all your best stuff, but if you put some stuff in, it's going to draw more attention. And the fact that you're engaging in an open source market, it's going to show the consumer that, like, you're not a greedy fuck who's looking to just bend everybody over. Like, the walk down and fuck them all mentality needs to go away.
Yeah.
Because it's too bad that, like, we're getting that from the fucking corporate douchebags and the VCs.
Yeah.
But then when you get it from a cannabis industry guy that you've known forever, who thinks that he needs to walk down and fuck them all now, it just fucks everything up. So it's, you know, we try to stay on the side of, like, fun, good times, open source. You know, it's just like, you know, like if you're sitting with your friend and he shows you a concentrate and he's like, oh, bro, this is fire. You smell it, check it out. And then you're like, can I have a dab? And he's like, no. That's what that reminds me of. It's like, you're ultimately saying no. And you're saying, like, oh, it's 120 a gram on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's what's forever motivated people in our industry to be like, well, fuck you, dude.
Yeah. Well, what's
interesting
is you're optimizing the supply chain, which is ultimately going to lead to a lower price. And the biggest issue that high quality solventless has is, you know, the market price that it needs to garner. And so if you're able to optimize and create efficiencies where there aren't any, you know, you're ultimately able to capitalize on those and, you know, pass that down to the consumer. So I think that's really cool. I wanted to ask you, does Pipeline exist underneath the umbrella that is 800 pounds mantra?
Mm-mm.
No, it is completely.
Pipeline's managed by Mantra. Pipeline's a separate LLC. And the model of Pipeline is it's attached to a distro license, which then allows us as non-equity shareholders to be able to conduct business in the cannabis industry and profit from it. But what we're ultimately doing is just adding to the bottom line of the distro that we work with. So we have been able to secure our distro partnership, which is great.
Awesome.
Those guys are good friends of us. We've known for a while, and they're finally in a position where they're like, hey, we could totally do this. So they've got Northern California facility, Los Angeles facility, and then our production is in Santa Barbara, which is essentially in the center of the state. So logistically, what it allows us to do with this partnership is, you know, we generate the sales, we work with the farms, and what's genius about Pipeline is we don't store material. So Pipeline doesn't have or need a large facility where I'm storing a ton of fresh frozen material. That's not really how Pipeline works. The farms themselves have infrastructure to store their own material, the ones that we work with, and they can grow that infrastructure. But we're also working off of harvest schedules. And that's kind of the new component that we've added to it, which is like, you know, real fresh frozen. It's very fresh and it's freshly frozen and it's right to you in a very quick manner in a controlled environment because of the bag and all these different things that we've added to this whole process to be able to secure and make it a much smarter process and make it open to everybody. So, you know, and another thing too is like the black market's not going anywhere. So, and then the DEA just came out the other day and said that cannabis seeds are not illegal to sell because it's technically a food. It's technically a fucking food product, which to me says that every seed breeder, if you're a seed breeder and you're not getting a storefront this morning, you're fucking up.
Yeah.
You're totally fucking up.
Yeah.
Because all you're selling, you know, the potential THC that seed can produce is not prosecutable. The DEA just came out and said that. What you're essentially selling is protein. And you're selling protein that you could say to the person like, yeah, it has this much protein in it, but it has 0 THC in it, so it's legal to sell. And if you go and plant these seeds, guess what? That's fucking legal too, because you can grow 6 plants in California.
Yep.
So if you're a seed breeder and you're in California or in any other state that has like laws to ours, you're dropping the fucking ball if you don't have a storefront right now. You really are. It's, I've watched Edgar do it, and Edgar kind of led the way, and I have so much love for him and what he does. And, I've watched Swerve, Swerve's doing it now with Cali Connection. You're seeing some guys getting smart and doing it. And I think it's, I would love, we're close with ChemDog. We're close with that whole group. So, we're hoping that some of our friends and other guys start doing it as well. I think it's, I think the DEA's play was this, actually. I think what the DEA is doing is flooding the market. If you flood the market and allow everyone to breed, then you're going to lower the quality of what's going out now, right? Because now you got a bunch of people jumping in the pool who want to try it. I think that's really what their approach is. If I was at the DEA and I saw the writing on the fucking wall, that would probably be my move. So like, well, let's dilute the living shit out of their fucking market and make it where like, it's going to be a lot harder to find really good fucking seeds. Okay. Because now you got a bunch of fucking, pollen chuckers coming in, and, and if we inundate you with selection, you got way more choices now, so they might be able to slow things down. But I also think that's the nail in the coffin, man. This one right here is the real fucking bang, because now you're talking about a lot more seed on the market and being sold, they're doing a few other things too that look like, we just saw the last bill that went through here where they were trying to legalize cannabis. They slid that in, and there were some things about it that made some people upset. I think a 5% tax national on cannabis is probably pretty good. I don't know what you guys are paying in Canada, but
way more than that.
You're getting, I've heard stories. Yeah. So it's, people were going nuts. They're like, oh, 5% to 8%. I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, that's not too bad, So, but yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. But I do think that, the whole seed game, the whole selection, propagation, it's so specific for hash. It's really, you could have a strain that's great on the plant, and we all know how it works. You get 10 seeds, you get 20 seeds, you do your thing, you grow them all side by side. You're looking for Alice's beneficial traits, and you can identify those. And if you're lucky, it was a good breeder and they've stabilized it, and there's very distinct ones that you can look at, and you can see phenotypes and all those cool things. That's really what that feeds hash. That's the thing. There's strains that are out there that produce way more. And it really comes down to cuticle size. Like the size of that cuticle head that holds that trichome in place is much bigger. And that's where all this bulk is coming from. And that's kind of why you're seeing guys breed with GMO, breed with banana OG, breed with fucking the cookies and cream, breeding with these things that work. And it's just like back in the day when they used GS13 for everything.
Yeah.
That was kind of the idea. And now it's like there's a new GS13. It's called fucking GMO.
Yeah.
And it's being used to pump shit up. And then you can find even more bland ones like cookies and cream, which is a little more mild. And that's why we love Taylor and what he's done with T Diesel and Solventless Viking, and Little Lake Valley Seed Co. is his seed brand. So if you guys can check that out, go take a look. But
so you do work with Grandiflora, and you've done long time work with Chiba Chews. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you do with groups like that?
Yeah, so we do some brand management stuff. Chiba Chews is a little more in depth for us. So we work really closely with the brass there and help them position themselves with new production in California, new distribution in California. And we've helped them lock in those deals. And then 800 actually manages the distribution for Chiba Chews for California. And technically, I think I'm the director of Chiba Chews for California by title. So that's a little more in depth with that. And it's a lot of working directly with Eric, who's the CMO of the company, Dave, and then, James is the founder, who's here in California as well. So it's kind of become a California brand in some ways with the founder being here. And then luckily for me, I've been, really good friends with James for a long time and known Eric and Dave as well. And they came to us and said, oh, James, I think it was Eric called me one day and was like, oh, you have a fucking management company? Like, let's go, So it was like, oh shit, yeah, let's go. So that was our first client was Chiba Chews. And then we worked with Lifted, which was a big flower brand here in California. And that was kind of our first flower brand that we worked with, and did mainly business development for those guys, helping them line up different collaborations and get into certain distribution and, bring some ideas to life or help push some business, things forward, whether it was bringing in brands to work with them at their facility or do different things like that. And then we stopped working with Lifted. They were acquired by a Canadian company. And then after that, they, we in a good way parted ways and kind of went on to do other stuff. And then I think that's what drew the attention of Grandiflora. They saw what we did there. And then Mark hit us up. We started talking with Mark and Prada, and was able to get into a contract with those guys to be able to do more back office stuff to help them. And those guys are breeders. They know how to run a distro very well. They know how to breed very well. They have great, just amazing talent in those fields. And then just their back office needed a little bit of help in terms of, tightening that up and then helping them with, finding some new production deals and changing some gears that they had. They wanted to, they just shifted from a facility that they had there in Oakland that they'd been in there since their inception. So now they're in a new facility in Oakland. We helped them transition sort of, some loose ends to get to that point, and then help them get a brand new CPA and some other things. And so we do that sort of stuff with them, and we're still in close contact with them. And we just did a genetic licensing deal with Headwaters for those guys. So the contracts are signed on that. So the idea behind that is it's also coming back to like the open source thing. So Mark at Grandiflora is like, you know what, there's no reason why the lemon cherry gelato is not out, so let's put it out. Let's also put out the E85. Let's also put out these other strains that are a little older to make way for the new strains they're going to launch.
Yeah.
And now those strains will be available for the first time through a nursery in California, the direct cut from the breeder for flower production. So we just help them get that done, which is great. And we're looking forward to seeing how they do there. It's a really nice program for both companies. So we put some of that stuff together, do those things. We also do a lot of business development for Holy Water, Michael's brand. We do biz dev for Rosin Baron, Diamond Baron, Dave and his brand. So we try to stay, because of Pipeline and because of what we're building there, we try to stay no ownership in any of the brands that we work with. We just want to support those guys and help them. We'd rather work with everybody and, infuse the genetics, perfect the supply chain situation, and then sit back and get to, benefit from that collectively, everybody together to get to do that and be welcome in every single camp. We don't want to wave one flag too much. And I think it sort of falls into like the, anyone who tells me they have a favorite concentrate company is not looking hard enough. There's a lot of them. You might have one that you think is your favorite, but it's just the easiest to get, right? Because you didn't try, fucking Kush Kurgs, and you haven't tried maybe like, one of the other guys. So it's Simply Adam or something, so, Dead Bobby or some of these crazy ones, that a lot of guys just see the name and see the logo and, For My Head or Swollen Heads or any of these fucking brands that you're just like. And this year, with the help of my fucking beloved friend and mentor, Marcus, it kind of opened up the doors with Legends, and it just sort of, made it where, everybody was like, oh, there's, Marcus doesn't really allow people to pinpoint where he is.
Before we jump into Legends, because I have a ton to talk about Legends. I got to know, the people want to know, what's the reason behind the name 800 Pounds Mantra?
So an 800 Pounds Mantra is, a mantra is a meditation essentially. So it's using a phrase to direct someone, to their goal, right? That's essentially what it is. And at the time I was kind of looking at the cannabis industry and I was like, this is a fucking 800-pound gorilla. Like, this is a monster of a son of a bitch on every level. You could have a fucking PhD in statistics, and you could have gone to fucking Cornell or to Wharton Business School, and you come into cannabis and we hand you your fucking ass on day one. And then we might murder you on day 6 because none of what you learned is ever going to fucking work, right? And then you'll rip all your hair out being like, oh. And then every time they're like, these stupid fucking stoners don't know what they're doing, right? So we were like, all right, it's a monster. It's crazy. It's the 800-pound elephant. It's the 800-pound gorilla. It's so big and crazy. But if someone has an idea and they come into cannabis and they want to bring it to life, you're going to need an 800-pound mantra to bring that shit to life. You're going to need strength, power, hope, bravery, all the fucking things that are going to be necessary. So we look at 800 pounds mantra because it is technically a consortium of consultants, the top consultants that we know, whether it's Taylor or Alex from Resin or, Justin Leave, who's one of the founders of 710, or Brad, or any of these people that we have access to. That's who we work with. That's who when we have a project we're working on, we're able to jump in and just hit up any of the different guys that we know. So the force and the ability of that is endless. It can kind of get to that. Rolodex is so wonderful. So that's really where 800 pounds mantra comes from. It's if you're looking to launch something in an impossible place, you're going to need force and you're going to need energy and a mantra to do it. And that's 800 pounds mantra. So.
Really cool. I was going to jump in there. Like, how did you bring the team together? You already mentioned some of your team and consultants there, but how did you meet them and then decide those were the guys I'm going to work with?
Yeah, it's funny that you ask it because the team is me and Kevin. There's Kevin and myself, and then there's Mark Pelter, who's our farm liaison, who does everything with the farm. And then we have Alan Russell, who's the sales guy that works with us, that does everything right now. So it's a really small team. It's not a very big team of guys. So to answer your question, Kevin and I have been friends since, probably 12 years, probably 13 years or somewhere. So when I was at Steep Hill launching the company, Kevin was at Raw, and Kevin actually helped put together the marketing and a lot of that stuff for Raw, for their branding and stuff. And he was the one that was, interfacing with, the bands and bringing Raw into music, and they were sponsoring these musical events and sort of bringing Raw to the forefront of the culture in the industry through music. So I knew Kevin, he would come into Steep Hill and just drop off a table of Raw products. So when you walked into Steep Hill, we had this very famous crescenda that was in our front lobby, and it would just be covered in Raw products. And you'd be able, everyone who came in would be like, can I have one of these? I'm like, yeah. So Kevin just would stock that up for us. He'd come into Oakland and just fill this thing up for us all the time. So I got to know Kevin pretty well. And then Kevin's way into glass, Kevin's way into hash, and I'd see him at all the events. And then before you know it, he's a judge at High Times. And, I was lucky enough to get to present the High Times Hash Award for years in different places where they had it. So I'd always see Kevin at events, and we've just been friends forever. And then when I was with this subpar, lackluster nutrient company for a while, the nutrient company was like, hey, we want to do this other project. And we launched into 11 licenses here in Los Angeles. So we had production, distribution, transports, everything you could think of. And we needed to build a sales team for that. So when I was tasked with it as the chief operations officer for the company, I wanted to make sure that we had competent people in there that could help us, that knew the culture, that knew a lot of the accounts and knew a lot of the people. And Kevin's just that guy. He's known so many people and done so much in the industry, and and a musician, and just has all these talents and all these things that he does. So, and now he's just a fucking NFT Web3 wizard that's come out of nowhere as well. So, we met back then, and just when it came time to bring someone out to California, Kevin came, joined the team that we had there at the cannabis company that we were forming. And unfortunately, the founder that we had blew the money that was in escrow, and then started to make some problems. And before you knew it, poor Kevin was the first one to get fired. And, so then after that, luckily for us, the president of the company, who was also fired, came to me and was just like, look, I think you should form a company. I think you've got a great team and you've got all the tools that you really need. And originally, besides Kevin, it was Kimo Kiawe, who was Kimo's a gentleman who's from the Bay Area, who had a dispensary up there, that Divinity Tree, which was in San Francisco, was very successful in the medical days. Kimo, I needed a right-hand man. I needed somebody to kind of do a jack of all trades, but then also be able to interface with the president of the company and the other guys on the executive side. So we brought Kimo in as that person. So it was Kimo, Kevin, myself, and then Greg from the East Coast, Greg Dobin. So Greg went back east when everyone got fired. We formed 800, and at first it was like we had some investment money that came in, and we didn't really know what the fuck we were going to do. There was no direction. It was just sort of like, okay, we got a consulting company. Like, who are we going to consult? So that's when we started digging around and sort of, I reached out to Chiba and saw that kind of sparking. And, it took like 8 or 10 months to get the Chiba project off the ground. So that was a long time without getting paid, for 2 years almost. We worked and didn't really get paid and just built the whole thing. And it's come to a point now where like we have revenue coming in and things are, obviously it's a startup, it's a small company, but we're taking in some investment right now. We've got a deck that we've put together. Once we were able to secure production, transport, genetics, propagation, and our distribution, once we had all those things in place, it was time to then move on to the next step, which would be build a deck, bring in investment, 18 to 24 months for the sales team to roll out and have that runway for all of that, and the promotions team and the marketing team. And then that's the last final phase of pipeline, is to, close that investment, bring everything in and start that. And for now, Kevin and I are doing the sales. So the idea is to, like I said, we've put together a great deck, which shows, 18 to 24 months of runway, which is necessary. We bring in an office manager, we bring in 3 sales, a sales manager and 2 sales guys, and get this thing started. Also build that media team of our own, and start the process. We've got our farm liaison and, the director that's working there with Mark Pelter, and has a great, Mark's a Buddhist monk who's just one of the most loving, fucking amazing people you could ever have. Another mentor of mine, someone I've known forever. And Mark has so much experience in building cannabis dispensary, distribution, and transport in California with his company, which is Perfect Union, which is a large dispensary chain and distro chain that they have. He still owns that, still a part of that. But he's kind of stepped away in the day-to-day management of it. And now he's an owner, and he's come on to Pipeline. He works with us directly, and just one of the best guys you could ever meet. So Chemo is still an ally of ours, still someone that we love and work with. He's up in the Bay doing events and other stuff, and still, comes and works with us and does stuff with us. And, there's always a door open with Chemo in what we do. So, but yeah, so it's just probably the 4 of us, I think, started, me, Greg, Chemo, and Kevin. And then as things developed, Chemo and Greg kind of, took a bit of a hiatus from it, and Chemo still sticks around. But then it's me, Kevin, and me, Kevin, Alan, and Mark at this point. Yeah, and Andrea. So we have another friend that helps us. That she's, sometimes there to kind of give us some advice or help us out. She's an MBA. So, and we have a couple MBAs that we turn to. Those are 3 letters that you should learn when it comes to business, because those guys know their shit in a way where they can look at what you're doing and be like, this is going to fail for this reason, so change this. So that's what we do. We just empower kind of that group and work with those guys. So
that's awesome, man. So I want to switch gears. I've been looking forward to this part. The whole interview. I want to talk about Legends.
Yeah.
You recently became an equity partner in the Legends
North America. Yep.
North America, and you and I both know Marcus, aka Bubble Man. Can you talk a little bit about, for those who are listening who don't know what the Legends Dinner is? Can you talk about a little bit about that and your experience with it?
Sure. Yeah. So Legends Dinner is about a 21-year-old hash dinner that started. It originated in Amsterdam, and it was essentially a overflow of the Amsterdam High Times Cup celebration. After a number of years, that event itself would have obviously, bring a lot of energy and effort into Amsterdam for the event. So from the guys behind the scenes that were causing that energy and effort would celebrate after the event together, and it was in the form of a dinner. And originally, that group of people who orchestrated the High Times Cup and made it all happen, you had some very big international smugglers and some other guys in there that didn't want to go to the High Times Cup, but instead they wanted to be in town, watch everything happen, collect their scruples and their dough, and bounce out. And this kind of became the culmination of the event after High Times, whether it was large breeders or smugglers or hash makers of all types from all over the world. They'd be there for the cup, and then they'd go in and do, have this dinner. And the dinner, from Marcus's explanation, has a lot of origins in Indian culture and Afghani culture as well. And it was it originated back to some pilgrimage that occurred. And Marcus knows all the details. He's so well up on a lot of this. But they would have a pilgrimage where the farmers would navigate to a certain place, and when they'd reach their pilgrimage spot, they would have a celebration conducted in the format of everyone bringing their wares, consuming together, and then they would kind of have whatever they pick a winner amongst everyone, and then they'd come back the next year and do the same thing again. So now you're kind of letting the best heads come to the top, and now you're bringing them into this dinner. And that's what Legends was for a long time. It was a dinner that they had there in Amsterdam. It eventually made its way over to Spain. It's made its way to Jamaica. And it's eventually made its way here to the United States with us and our partnership that we have here. So we did the first one in Los Angeles on November 27th of 2021. So we've got the first one we did. We've got that in the books. We learned a lot from it. So Marcus Wood, he was the guy who put it all together for many years and orchestrated this whole thing and brought it to all those different places. And he and I have been friends for quite a while. We've known each other for many years. And from that scene,
I think you were actually the rep for
I was actually. Yeah, I was the rep. So I had a buddy who was a steel worker that worked for Vans on the side, and he was a rep that I knew. And he was like, "Hey man, I got this," because he knew I grew and knew I was a grower and I was in that business. And he's like, "Dude, I've been repping and working with these guys out of Canada, and in my spare time I go to grow shops and I show them these like hash bags." And I'm like, "Oh, these are fucking," because I'd heard of them. I'm like, "Oh, these are fucking cool. I've heard of these bags." He's like, "Well, they need a real rep, so if you want to," he's like, "I know you're like, you go to grow shops and you know these guys, like you might want to do this." So he put me in contact with Marcus, and I was just like, "Hey, I'm a rep. This is my territory. There's this many smoke shops and grow shops, or this many grow shops," because that's where we were kind of selling them at the time. I'm like, "There's this many grow shops, and I'd be happy to kind of jump on it." And he was like, "Hey, let's do it." He sent me out a bunch of samples, and so for a little while, I was the rep for Northern California for bubble bags, and that's how we initially met. And then that kind of opened the door that when I went to the High Times Cup, when I finally got my grow game on and had some money, and I was going to buy seeds, I went there and I actually saw Marcus, and I had an in because he knew who I was. So I'd get to kind of see him and talk to him. And just from, going to Amsterdam the first times and getting out there, I got to know Don and Aaron from DNA. I got to know Adam from TH Seeds and Soma and, Ariane and those guys, and just got pulled into that group of guys, just getting to know them, and was lucky enough that when we brought everything back to come back to California and fast forward into the testing world, we had so much support because whether it was those guys or High Times coming to us and being like, "Hey, we want you to test for all of our events." We were the first company to ever test cannabis for any sort of contest or anything like that. First to do potency testing, microbiological, terpene, concentrate, the first ones to do all that stuff. So we drew a great deal of attention, and so that kind of helped. I remember going a couple of those years going and actually bringing a Quantican system, which was an NIR system that we developed for testing cannabis remotely, to Amsterdam, and running that thing and testing all the samples in Amsterdam, staying up till 4 a.m. and what we called drug jail, and getting all the work done and hammering it out. So by doing that and getting close to High Times, they eventually getting to know everyone there, and Bobby and Marcus, and getting to know all those dudes, it kind of, they opened the doors for them to say, "Hey, you own a testing lab and you really like hash and you could take some big ass dabs." And it was like, "Well, why don't you present the hash award?" So then that really helped kind of, I think, bring attention to my name and the industry, especially on the hash side. And then when I exited Steep Hill, I just went deep into hash. So now you kind of fast forward to that, and my friendship with Marcus would be, now I could reach out to Marcus. I could text Marcus or, get into Hash Church and things like that. And that was sort of what I think for he and I, it strengthened our friendship and our relationship. And right before COVID, we were talking and just kind of going back and forth with some ideas. We've always tried to, I think Marcus has always tried to have a partner in the United States that he can trust, that he can do business with. And I think that he hasn't really had the best of luck with that in some of the stuff. So what we've done is, again, like anything that we form, we do it as honest and as straightforward as possible. And, I went to him and said, hey, I'd love to do Legends. What do you think? And he's like, fuck, man, I think it's a great idea. Like, what are you thinking? And I came up with we had a bunch of ideas. We were throwing stuff around. We got a think tank at 800, which is nice. So we threw a bunch of ideas back and forth. And then, of course, COVID hit. And it just became like a shutdown for 2 years, essentially. Yeah. So we sort of were like, all right, he's not, he fucking can't do anything. He can't even put fucking 5 people in a room. So, and then that sort of started to subside.
Yeah.
I started hitting him back and I said, hey, like, what do you think about this concept or this concept? And we eventually came to an agreement where he was like, hey, look, throw it, put it on. I'll support. I'll be involved in the process as much as you want me to be, and put it on so that we came back and said, let's put it on so that there's no profit. We don't want to profit off of this thing on the first one. We just want to see what's possible, what we can do, who's interested. And then again, how the fuck do you throw this event, which has only been hash makers? You've never had, there's rare people who have been invited, including myself, that weren't really these hash makers or other guys, so it was always kind of like a very close event with all these people.
For sure.
So now how do you throw this event in the United States, in Los Angeles for that matter, and have the public get to enjoy it, but still make sure that it focuses on the maker? How do you do that? And we kicked a lot of ideas around and we came up with an understanding of, well, let's make it focus on the maker, but now let's bring in the breeder and let's bring in the farmer. And that's because we think that would kind of complete it and make it a little more. And that's kind of how we've structured it for the U.S. is, in North America is, especially the United States, of course, is that we're going to, now include those other 2 components because they do make up, when you get the maker, you're only getting one piece of the puzzle, really. You don't get the whole picture. And nowadays, the 3 are so intertwined.
Yeah. And
a lot of the time nowadays, the 3 are just one person. It's like one fucking dude, who's kind of doing all that. So, with all that in mind, we just, figured out a way to put the event on, and we did the first one. We thought it was a great success, and we got a lot of feedback that people really enjoyed it and they liked it. And now we're kind of working on, perfecting.
Can you talk a little bit about the format of the one that was just recently held in LA?
Yeah, so it's no cameras, no media whatsoever, not even anyone covering the event to write about it. We wanted the first one just to be as in tradition and in step with the original ones as we could, just to see how to test the waters and see. So the format is you invite 25 makers. They can either enter rosin or melt, whatever they choose, or water hash, whatever they like. They're able to come to the dinner and bring with them the hash that they want to smoke with everybody. And that's what makes it legal for us to do that too, because you can come to a dinner, you can bring hash and you can smoke it. That's we put on the food, we put on the entertainment, we put on all the other stuff, but these makers are able to come and their hash is able to be shared with everybody because they're able to legally bring that amount of hash and share it. So that's what we built it in a way so that you have 25 makers. We're thinking of raising up to 30 because instead of just having the way we did the categories originally was a little confusing to some of the makers. And I think that some of them were like, well, hey man, it should be either, one or the other, or it should be melt and you shouldn't allow rosin, and they like to use the term rosin boys and like, oh, these rosin boys and it's this and that. And it's like, well, look, not all guys are in a position where they even have the ability or the resources to make 6-star melt. They're limited in what they do, but they make really great rosin with what they do have. And they've built a really good brand by doing that. And they've drawn a ton of attention. And like, look right now at 710's bracket they just did. Yeah. The winners of that bracket aren't who people expected the winners to be. It was the most popular brands that had the most people to vote. And that would be West Coast Alchemy and I think Hash House, I think it was. So it's, you got to give credit to these guys for what they've done, because they've not only had to accomplish what they've accomplished, but they've done it with limited ability. They don't have their own farm. They don't have some of these resources, like that other guys have. So we did it in that way. We allowed it to be both. We're changing it now. So it's going to be technically 3 categories. There'll be the water hash category, there'll be the rosin category, and there'll be a collaboration category of either of the two. So if you're a maker, you'll be able to enter both if you want. You can have 2 entries, one rosin, one melt. And then you can have a third entry as a collaboration with another maker. Now we want to kind of bring it out because we want to really promote collaboration. I mean, here's the other thing about this event. We want the makers to be able to market what they're doing here. Whatever you enter and put in, we want you to run with the marketing after that.
Yeah.
We want you to come out of this thing and go, oh, here, whether you're black market or not, we want you to come out and go, oh, this was our entry to Legends.
Yeah.
Now it's available to the public. So we want you to we want to promote that as well. And we think adding that collaboration component. So this original format was just 2 categories, no phones, no cameras, no judging technically. What we did was we went back to the original format of Legends, and the way that it was originally done loosely was everyone brought in their stuff, everyone consumed, whatever was gone first was the winner, because that's what everyone liked the most, right? Because it's gone now. So we did that. We did that on this one. We used a POS system. We put everything into a POS and we dispersed it in an open hash bar to everybody that was at the event. So you come in, we had the makers come first with their guests, which were the farmer or the breeder. They came in first. They had about an hour and a half to get their kits, to sit down, to dig in, to start consuming, to hit the bar, to grab more. We gave them an hour and a half. The makers and their guests were able to have access to 0.5 grams. And then when we brought in that guest group, the outside guest group, people that are not makers, not this, not that, maybe they're a maker, but they're a BHO maker or something else. That group of guests, then they're able to come in. They would come into the event a little bit later, let the makers and their guests get a head start, and they have access only to 0.25 grams. So when they go up to the bar, get 0.25 grams. So it was just an open hash bar, and people couldn't even understand it. They were like, wait, so I can go up as many times as I want and get hash? And I'm like, yeah, until it's gone. Just take all the hash. That's what it's for. It's really, I wanted people to have this freedom to be like, this is fucking nuts. Like,
so cool.
I wanted it to be like people's favorite event, So, so we did that format. It worked really well.
Did you do it at a restaurant or was it like a house or?
Yeah, it was a private, venue. So it's in the green zone, of course, which is legal here. There's an event space that we partnered up with called the 91 Club, which is right there in the green zone in downtown LA. Yeah, so our buddy Fidel from Fidel's Hydro, Possessions Won't Make You Rich on Instagram. He's just a great fucking human being and a good friend. Went to go meet with him one day, and he's Lebanese, and we had this amazing lunch at this Lebanese spot called Carousel, and it was just so fucking good that I was like, when it all came together, I was like, all right, we have to have Carousel cater it. Carousel's obviously, just cool. Amazing Lebanese food. And Legends would always be Moroccan, Lebanese, Afghani. It would always be at a restaurant and serve that kind of food. So we want to keep it in that culture. We want to make sure that Legends always, when you're at Legends, there's always water, honey, tea, and fruit always available. Amazing. Because those are the tools that you're going to use.
So cool.
Those are the tools that you're going to use to dab more, actually. The sugar in the fruit, the honey is coating your throat and helping you. The tea is kind of giving you caffeine, keeping you going. And those are the tools that these old school cats were using on that pilgrimage that we talked about, So those are always there. They're always present at Legends. And then there's the coursed meal, which is a large multi-course meal. And then, of course, the desserts come. And then another thing is there's a mothership glass drop in the event. So, I was a tour kid who went on Dead Tour and Further Tour and Fish Tour. And luckily, my buddy Al and I and Deppy, we knew each other from tour. So our friend group was just a group of kids that were on tour that all knew each other. And I think a lot of us are. Like I always find people sitting there being like, wait, you were at Deer Creek in fucking 97? Like,
like Marcus picking up Spooner and like,
oh, that's the best story ever.
Yeah,
that's the greatest story ever. Yeah. So we know Deppy really well. We know Mothership really well. And we were able to get those guys to come in and do a drop during it. And we're going to be building on that with them. We're going to now bring in, so for Legends next, the next thing you'll see from us will be an NFT drop, which will, for the first time ever, show everybody all of the entries and legends. So we're going to take those digitally, those digital photos. We're going to either animate or do a few things with those. But every single entry, all 24, we had 24 entries instead of 25. We tried to do 25, but we had things will happen sometimes at the last minute. So we have 24 beautiful photos from the entries from the event. Those are going to go into NFT form. We're talking with Marcus about incorporating some abilities with those NFTs to possibly get the buyers an option to go into a hash church, an option to get into the next Legends. So every ticket for this next Legends is set to be an NFT. So we're going to switch to that format, start to incorporate that stuff. We're talking with some of the people that we do work with very closely to also do the same thing. So whether that's, Mothership or other guys, we're building a very strong platform with Chronic Token. And that's the token that we're working with for all of our blockchain stuff that we're doing.
Do you think that with your work with Mothership and, Mothership's long-standing history in the Glass community and Glass's unique relationship with Hash, do you see the Glass side of things growing over the next few years?
Yeah, I think you're starting to see of course, before growth, there's always a major consolidation. That's always how it works. Ebb and flow. So we just watched a major consolidation, I think, is what we just saw. You saw a lot of prices go from, holding up here, especially like if you look at the Quaves and you see how Quave was, 40, 60,000, you get Quaves now for 15, 18 grand, 20,000. And so there was a major drop in that. And now you're seeing it kind of buck, Darby, WJC, Elbow, and, guys are kind of bringing it back up, and Mothership, including with some of the stuff they're doing as well with their series drops that they do. So it's coming back up. It's kind of, but it's refined. Now it seems like there's a lot more cream at the top when you look at it. Most expensive pieces are like the Buck sculptures or the Buck WJCs, and some of these ones that are just fetching top dollar. I think what's going to happen is there's a younger generation of blowers that are coming out now that are kind of coming into the cap game. It's easier to kind of launch as a cap guy. We're seeing some of the big glass blowers turn now into quartz guys that are running with that. Toro, we cannot talk about this without talking about JP and
100%.
What he's done. And the funny ass story that the slurper was actually invented for Marcus, because Marcus talked in an interview about a dream that he had about this nail that fucking was an apparatus that worked in a certain way. And then JP interpreted that description and built the slurper and sent the first one to Marcus. So some people don't know it, but Marcus is the inspiration for the fucking slurper. Yeah, which is insane. Yeah, it's crazy. So it's JP and Marcus are good buddies. There's a lot of history and culture in the whole thing, and there's no part of this that makes me feel like I'm special at all. I recognize the special person here is Marcus. Yeah. That's really the guy that's cultivated this entire culture and built this whole thing. And, whether it was from Manitoba Hemp Company into Whistler Tech, into his ventures that he has now, it's a huge privilege and an honor. And just, I love working with him. He's just one of the fucking most straightforward, no nonsense kind of people you can work with. And I think that's why he and I work well together, because I'm sort of the same way. And, there's nothing we can't discuss. There's nothing we get on a call and we go to the hard stuff first. It's like, hey, let's knock these out and do this. And I've been lucky in the sense where we just work well together. So we've been able to, he gives us all of the freedom. So when it comes down to what we want to do and how we want to do it, it's a conversation that, I'm going back, Kevin and I go back and sit with Marcus and kind of etch out and build. And of course, out of respect, we always want to make sure that we're just running as much of it through him to get his approval and what he thinks. And it's just been good. Like everything we've handed in that direction, he's been super stoked on and really happy with it. Bringing Mothership in and bringing some of these other stuff in that we can. It's made a big difference. And there's also
his life to resin, that's for sure.
Oh my God! No one I get pictures from everybody, and I have a ton of friends. A very large list of friends that are in this business, and there's my pictures that he sends me that are in my phone are like, it's not just like he sent me a picture of one freezer. It's like a fucking hallway of freezers.
Oh yeah, what he's done
every one of them is full of melt and fucking. I mean, he just lives that life so heavily, you know, from Whistler, and just, I don't know, he's really such a rare bird in terms of our industry, and who, you know, so to be associated with him, to be a part of Legends, to be able to get to do this, it feeds in a lot to Pipeline and a lot of what we're doing, because it is the culture and it is part of it. And then, you know, we wouldn't be able to do it without the sponsors. Like, we wouldn't be able to do it without Octave and Meister and Davis and those guys, and our friends, you know, Chris and those guys at Mills, you know, the guys over at Rosentech, and, you know, Clean Pump, and, you know, all the sponsors that we had, Pro Swabs, and or Glob Mops. You know, it's just, it's really, you know, when you put this thing together and you don't know, and I get on the phone, I start calling these guys, and everyone's like, yes. And then you do it, and everyone's involved. And now it's given us the chance now to do the next one. So when we come into, you know, Legends 2, which will be in Los Angeles, I think we're aiming for December 4th and 5th. So now we're looking at a 2-day event. And we're going to be looking to create a little bit of a different experience. We worked heavily, Chemo, who I mentioned earlier, worked really hard with us on Ego Clash. So we worked for Third Gen and Brandon and his company, and we helped organize Ego Clash before COVID. And when we did that, we put together a judging system that was done from the phone. So you'd be able to judge everything from the phone. And unfortunately, at the event, we weren't able to deploy it because they didn't have internet at the location. It was in a vineyard that was like in West Bumfuck of Mendo somewhere. So you weren't able to have it. So it was like, all right, we put that together, and Chemo kind of was the brainchild behind this thing, but it was created at 800 for those guys. So we still have access to that judging that was used at the last Ego Clash, which is just have your phone, boom, do all your judging there. So we're going to bring that in. We're going to have full judging categories now. We'll figure out what those categories are. Of course, flavor, taste, appearance. There's going to be a Legends Award, which will be, again, we'll POS everything. Whatever runs out first will win that a Legends Award. But now we're going to drag it into best tasting, best looking for both categories, or all three categories for that matter, and be able to, build this thing up a little bigger. We want to bring it now into a 400-person space. We want to try to utilize between 200 and 250 people now for the guest list. We're going to aim to do 30 makers instead of 25. And we're going to add those different categories. So we should build it up. And then the last component, the one part that we kind of, when looking at all this and optimizing things, we want to always optimize everything that we're doing. We want to bring it to its full potential and not have to do it twice, and just keep it evolving if we can. So one of those things that thought pattern led us to looking at our rentals for the event. And we're like, well, man, they drop it off here. They're very loose about when they pick it up, if they do, within the time frame they say. So we have access to this catering equipment and all these other things a little longer than just the 24 hours. So we're like, well, what can we do there? And then I was like, well, Legends was great, but it just had a very anticlimactic feel to me at the end, where it was sort of like, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the fuck out of here, right? It was like, everyone's lit too. Like, you've been fucking blowing for hours. So we wanted to kind of have sort of a comet tail on that sort of brought it back in. And the idea was, well, if we have the dinner and we send them out of there with a full judging repertoire, this whole system that we want them to judge in, why don't we invite them back the next day for brunch? Like, what fucking hash monster doesn't love brunch, right?
Brunch. So good.
So now we're going to have a much larger production component with audio, video, and a stage, so that we can actually address the crowd and talk, as opposed to me just being like, hey, everybody. And we'll have that component, but then we'll also have the first event will be dinner, hash judging and consumption, and then everyone can take their kits and go home. And then you come back the next day about 10, 11 o'clock, and there's a full brunch, and we continue the judging. We present the awards, and we call it a day. We kind of wrap it up.
The decision isn't made until after brunch. Is that?
Yes.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, all the data's coming in.
Yeah.
We can so what we're thinking is brunch and then sesh, And then right after brunch, we go in and start to present and put together the final results from everything, so that we can have a presentation after the sesh to culminate everything, where we do, the awards. There's winners. You don't take home a trophy, but you take home the bragging rights. And what we think we're going to do on this one is we're going to scale things back a bit in terms of the privacy component. And I think we're going to allow phones at this one. We think it's going to promote the event a lot better. We felt like the lack of promotion on the event side made it we wanted it to be real mysterious on the first one and really draw a lot of attention to it. Unfortunately, what that did was it made it where, like, your list of friends and the people that everyone's offended that they didn't get invited. And you're kind of like, oh shit, even now, like, even going and building that 30 maker list, that's not easy. That's going to be
and you got to
tough.
re-invite some people, but not other, like that.
Why didn't I get an invite?
Yeah.
So it's, and hey, man, I feel the same way with some stuff too. It's like, why didn't I get that recognition? Why didn't I get the call? So I know exactly how they feel. It's all love. We can't put on an event that invites everyone, because then you don't want to be there. Then you're at Lollapalooza, right? It's like, we don't want that to be the case. We'd rather try to keep it as intimate as possible. And that means that we do have to cap it. So.
Are there any plans to do other events, like with so much exclusivity around Legends, but so much buzz? Is it at all on your radar to maybe host a more inclusive event or a larger event?
Yeah. That's one of the things that we've always talked about, is doing a larger event that incorporates a hash judging event. So what we would want to do is more of a festival that celebrates hash and glass and invites all of the legal rec hash brands to come. You have a free event that people can go to for free. But when they get in, because of the way California works, as long as they're rec brands, they can bring their entry to the event and sell it from their booth. So what you do is you set it up that it's a free event, but if you want to judge, you just bar hop to all the booths, purchase your sample, judge your stuff, get your results in, and then there's going to be a broader, publicly voted on hash event. You have a 2-day. First day is very heavily focused on the hash and a little bit on the glass. Second day is heavily focused on glass, and then finishing up the hash component. And you spread it over 2 days. And then what you do is you bring in our friends from Secret Sesh, and maybe put Secret Sesh on the first night of the event. After the event closes and everyone's in town, you have this private Secret Sesh event that everyone goes to and fucking sessions and has a blast. And then the second night, after the event closes, you have the actual Legends dinner. It goes back to just 25 makers, one entry, no costs, because now we have a bag that we've created from putting on this larger festival that we can afford to put on Legends for free and make it so that it goes back to melt only, top guys, and then sort of bringing it out and have that event as well. So, we thought about that. We want to stay away from music. We want to stay away from high cost and these other things that are going to take away from what we can offer the consumer when they come and be a part of this event now. So that's kind of been a conversation that we've had, and we know that that's a couple years out. That's not something we could do right away.
For sure.
And we're not really afraid of someone stealing the idea. We feel if like someone comes along and does it, we would just piggyback on it and throw Legends on that weekend anyway. So it's, we're not too afraid of talking up too much about that stuff. So.
Sounds like they need a Legends up here in Canada.
I think there's gonna be. I mean, we've talked to Marcus about it. I think he's probably into it. I mean, I know that he mentioned Vancouver again. So, Vancouver. I think that's what he was mentioning. So.
Oh yeah, there was a Vancouver one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he had it at the glass shop. I think there.
Yeah, I'm sure he's working on one, and if he needs any heavy lifting done, he knows he can call me.
We talked with him about it. That would be obviously North America, I think. Yeah, so Canada is his thing. That's we're just down here. So Marcus and I are both partners in the LLC that we have. That's for Legends, Legends events. So that's we have that for the US. But I think for him, that's a good question for Marcus and a hash church, and see if we can push him to do that. I know that he's down. I know he's itching to do another one. So.
Awesome. So Addison, so I run White Ash Group, which is a cannabis-focused recruitment firm. So I just want to get into some hiring, people and culture related questions, if you're cool with that.
No problem.
You've been a sales rep before. So in your mind, what makes a good salesperson other than being a people person? What do you think are the qualities and traits that make a good salesperson?
I think it's focus, passion, drive, business acumen. There's things that have to be there. You don't want to talk to it's great to talk to a sales guy that knows his shit, but then if you don't get the follow-up email, if you don't get the price list, if you don't get what you need, you don't get somebody pulling for you in the company, then the sale goes away. So it does take passion. You want a passionate sales guy that knows his shit, that knows what he's talking about, loves what he does, and you got to wrangle those guys in a bit. They're wild and free. Mm-hmm. It's like a hockey team, but you got to, it's probably the best explanation of a fucking hockey team.
That's a great explanation.
It really is. Passion hockey are very fucking funny. But yeah, you kind of, you want a passionate person. You want somebody who knows their stuff, somebody who's brave, somebody who's just, has their back office in place, of course, too. You can't just be the cool good times guy that then fucks everything off and doesn't do it. So, you don't have to have a fucking college degree. You don't have to be, this guy or that guy. I think that actually ruins it when you're, whenever I see somebody that's like, I was a pharmaceutical rep, I'm like, sorry to hear that. It's like, I don't know if that's going to transfer over, like it's not, it's not exactly as simple as that. So, right? Like cannabis is so complex when it comes to it. But I think what we're looking for when we're building Wolves of Wash Street are, guys that are doing selection, guys that do know who the breeders are, guys that do know they have a very strong understanding of who the makers are nationally. They have a strong understanding of the history of things, and they know this stuff, and they can, they can interface correctly with the maker. That's really what it comes down to. We want them to be able to relay the information and stoke them out and make sense in what they say and what they do. We give them the tools to do that. So, but passion, honesty, those are some of the biggest things I think that are most important. So.
Okay. That was a great answer. Thank you. In terms of building company culture, what's your approach? Because I know you mentioned, culture crushes strategy always, which I love that phrase. Just talk a bit more about how you develop company culture.
With hash, nothing stokes me more out than like loving something myself and showing it to someone and they're just as stoked. They're just, oh, fuck, oh, God. And, I love when you hand someone a jar and they smell it and then they're like they look into the stratosphere. That's kind of one of my favorite things. It's like, it's just such an interesting thing that we all have that same love for the plant, whether it's in flower form or in concentrate form. That love for the plant is there, So yeah, it's, it's it comes down to like no bullshit, right? Like you don't want anyone around that's bullshit. You don't want anyone around that's not facing their own bullshit. And, I think one of the biggest things about our company culture is health and taking your health seriously and taking your gut health seriously and right now I'm sitting in the sun for a reason. I'm not sitting in the sun because, I want to, do this or that. It's like, I don't have shoes on right now. I'm grounding. I wake up in the morning, I go into the ocean first thing and I get that cold ocean water on me and I get that first, early UV sunlight, that red light on me and I ground and I'm getting an ionic connection to the earth. And, my health is really important to me. I can love hash, but I can love it longer if I'm healthy, right? I can be involved in it and be a part of it and have more input. Yeah. And that's kind of like our whole motto for our company is let's make hash better, so it's really, but I think it starts with yourself, like how healthy are you? How
self-betterment.
Yeah. When are you, are you using hash as a detriment or are you using hash as an enhancement to your life? And, and we all know that like, you can't rip dabs all day and not drink water. You're going to turn into fucking SpongeBob and die in the corner. So you gotta have all these tools, you need some coffee, you need some different things to kind of make it go. And I think it's, we're very much into counterculture. We're very much into mind expansion and, taking a DMT trip every once in a while and eating some mushrooms and making sure that those neural paths in your brain are being recharged and restructured and just, just getting light and being healthy, man. I think it's really important that I think burner's a great example for all of us, right? So here we have Gilbert, who's a, obviously a musician and a guy who's in the cannabis industry and done a great deal of work, garnered an incredible amount of recognition and attention for what he does. But then he realizes he has colon cancer, like what the fuck, man? And that's diet related. That's not I don't know his situation. I can't speak on it personally. I know him personally, but I didn't talk to him about, whether it was a genetic thing or whether it was derived some other way. But your health is so important. I mean, here's, Gil has amassed this incredible empire, but he can't enjoy it if he dies. He can't enjoy it as much. And now he's limited if he has to, deal with an ailment or something else because of it. So I loved seeing his reaction to that situation and really taking his health more seriously and starting to spread that sort of information around to other people that like, look, man, you aren't going to be able to smoke the next strain if you're dead. So focus on your fucking health. Make sure that you're researching about take an inventory, right? Like stop, take an inventory of when you wake up, when you go to bed, what you consume, what your vices are, whether it's the phone or cocaine or whatever the fuck it might be, and start to kind of maybe look at all those things and see how they are not fitting into your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. Like, what is it? The definition of insanity is doing the same fucking thing over and expecting something different. It's like, yeah, like, it's cool. It's cool to fuck off, and that's fine, but you only have so much time. Like, we're not here for a very long time. That's, you got to kind of, I've lost so many friends in the last year and, couple 2 years, watched guys that I've, Derek from Elemental Seeds and Elemental, and just watched friends and people that I love that didn't really take their health incredibly seriously. So they're not here with us. And that's something that I don't want to see anybody have to deal with that, whether it's the medical bills and the financial impact that it has on you or just the impact on your family. We gotta be here so we can keep smoking hash. So.
Well said. I love that. Addison, you work with a lot of different companies. You probably have insight to what's going on, within them. What are some challenges you notice with some of the companies you work with in terms of sourcing human capital and bringing in good hires?
I think one of the biggest challenges I think at this point is that there's not enough qualified people. And for some of the reasons that we just discussed, there's not people aren't really taking their health correctly, taking it seriously. They're not, they're addicted to their fucking phone, and they're not taking the steps to kind of put that shit down and develop themselves into stronger people. So the resources that are available to a lot of companies are not as rich as you'd wish they were, and then plus two, you've got people's confidence, they're not confident enough to really believe in themselves. They're not, and that kind of gets into mental health, and having a very solid routine so that your mental health is addressed and that you're feeling good about yourself and that you're able to represent a brand, you're able to represent a company. There's no shortage of people that want to be in the cannabis industry. I think there's a major shortage of people that have the confidence to be in the cannabis industry because, I made a post the other day that it was like, look, this is a thankless fucking industry. And if you think that every day you need to hit a fucking home run and you need to keep doing it. And as soon as you don't, they don't fucking care. Right. Like I always say, I'll be more worried when people stop copying me. That's when I'll really start to get worried, because then I'll understand that I don't have it anymore. It's like, I don't care when people copy what the fuck I do. Like, let's go. You want to fucking, thank you, sir. Let's do another. Let's go. I'll go up against anybody in the business. I have no fucking fear of that. I'll wake up earlier. I'll go to bed fucking later. I'll pump harder. I'll push harder. I'll do more. Only because it's that drive that's there, and I think that people lack that drive because they lack that confidence, because they lack that internal fortitude that it takes from a healthy person standpoint in order to do it. So I think the other component that makes it really challenging is that you have a ton of people that think that you need said skills to be in the cannabis industry. And the truth of the matter is you don't really need those skills. You don't, what the fuck are you going to do in our industry if you're a CPA? Okay, great. The federal tax laws for cannabis are very fucking different from what a regular company can do. So that's a specificity. It's a very different approach. So, you have to you have to really just be, I think the best person that I see is a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, optimistic, well-formed, healthy person who's, you know, curious and just willing to sort of learn and take it all in. There's too many people that come in that think that like a little bit of credit and a little one home run's enough. It's like, nah, dude, you got to strike out 70% of the fucking time. And if you ain't swinging that bat 100 times, then you ain't hitting the 30%. Like baseball is a totally different game from cannabis. Like I think you have to fucking, our success rate is way lower than that. Like, look at, I mean, how many fucking guys are really killing it? How many guys are actually, you know, I know who they are, I can name them, but their approach is very, very standard. It's very different from, you know, because look at us, we were mavericks that fought against the system, that then were pulled into an industry or then told, here's your industry, now make it go. So if you don't have the business acumen or the understanding on how to make things go, what the fuck are you really doing? You know, you're just sitting there pulling your dick. You might as well get back into the black market, you know? And it's like, it takes a certain understanding of yourself. And I think one of the main things is just, what I would tell anybody who's looking to get into cannabis is, look, find a field of expertise that aligns itself with cannabis and embark on that journey, you know, like, go to the sessions, get into the groups, go and, you know, and be a part of all these things. If you want to be a part of it, it takes energy and effort to be a part of it. Once you get into it, it takes being humble to get the credit and the attention that you deserve from the people around you in order to be elevated to that place. It doesn't happen overnight, and it really is going to come from community. And like, what I love about this is that hash community is probably one of the tightest communities in all the cannabis industry. It's not like the other, you know, you see a lot of guys coming to hash and glass are very close together and they feed one another very heavily. And there's just a great community there of people. So, you know, I think if you're looking for a job in cannabis, just be ready to fail a lot of the time and be humble and just be the hardest working motherfucker in the room. It's no different than anything else, you know, like it's the shit your dad tells you, like, stop being a fucking goofball.
Well, it's like,
and be the hardest worker.
If you're passionate about this, like if you actually do this and this isn't just a 9 to 5 for you, you've got every hour of the day that you're awake to think about it, right? And that's what I'm always saying is, like, you know, when I worked in other industries, caught me after 5:30, I'm not thinking about my job or what my peers in the industry think about me or how I could better optimize something in the industry. Whereas, you know, from the minute I wake up and even when I'm sleeping, like, these guys better catch up, you know what I mean? And I feel that same thing.
Well, what's the Vince Lombardi has a quote, obstacles are what you see when you take your eyes off your goals. You know, so if you're locked in on something, I don't give a fuck. No one's going to get in the way of you, right? They're not going to be able to take you off that. So it's true. It's like, you know, and then the other thing too is this, we're high. You're fucking high, man. Like, you can't, you have to, like, know your limits. You know, I get in the office like 8:30 and I get up at 5. So I'll take a dab and do it, you know, and it's kind of fueling stuff. It's a medicine that you're using as opposed to like, are you using it to enhance your personality and who you are? Or are you using it to dull the fact that you have no fucking skills? And, you know, like it really depends on it, you know, and it's nothing has given me more and taken more away from me in my life than cannabis. Nothing, you know, like it's the one thing that's the constant in my life, and it always has been. And but it doesn't define me, you know, it doesn't define who the fuck I am. But it is one of those things where, you know, a lot of people see you as one way, but if you come up to somebody, here's my advice. If you know somebody from social media only and you see them, it's okay to say, hey, I know you as this, but I'd love to get to know you. Yeah. I'd love to get to know you. What's your real name? What is, like, it's not hard to do that. You know, it's not hard to
treat them like a person, not an account.
Yeah, man. It's like, oh, fuck. And I do the same thing with companies. Like, I'll know a brand or a company, and our industry is shaking and moving so much that, you know, like, look at, you know, Professor Sif, you know, he used to work for another concentrate company that I knew, and which was providing material for an edible company. And, you know, he's evolved into creating this whole brand that he has now. But for a minute, I didn't know that Jay owned Professor Sif, that he was the same person, until I was, you know, at Ego Clash and I saw him and was like, wait, this is your fucking brand. And like, so social media has a way of kind of cloaking things, but that doesn't mean that like you refer to fucking, you know, Slut Whisperer as fucking Slut Whisperer. It's like, no,
Yeah.
God rest his soul. But you know, it's like, you gotta ask the man his real name and refer to him as that. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for those that slice of advice there. My last question would be, is there anything that you always ask someone, anyone, whoever you're interviewing or looking to bring onto a project before you do bring them in?
Yeah, I usually ask them what pH stands for. It reveals quite a bit if you ask that question.
It's potential hydrogen, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a potential hydrogen reading. And that's what most people don't understand. It's just reading the potential amount of hydrogen that's present. No, that's I asked that question just because I think it's a funny question that no one thinks about. So it gives you, and it also
unique
gives you
answer for sure.
well, it gives you an understanding of someone's background in regards to grow, you know, because I find that most of the guys that are really at the top of their game in our industry have been growers. They have this very intimate relationship with the plant. They've done selection. They know, you know, they've pollinated stuff. They've done things, and they've hit that wall that is breeding, that is production, that is, you know, they fucking ran the bait, you know, filled the basins at 4 a.m. and then fucking fucked them up, and then had to drain everything and run it all again and run the fucking feeds, and you know, and that's the second house of 4 fucking houses, right? And like, you know, they've done the gamut and they've made it happen. And if you ask that question about pH, it gives you a really strong understanding of who that fucking guy is, you know, or girl, you know, if they're like, oh, it's potential hydrogen, you know, I'm like, oh, yeah. And I usually ask grow questions. I mean, I was a grower for a long time, and I lived in that world, and you know, understand horticulture from that standpoint. You know, inoculant root growth and things like that are kind of, you know, the basic understanding of the plant that matters, not, you know, gimmick bullshit, weird fucking things. And I think that like if you talk to a grower, they can't help but give you so many details and start to open up. So it's a great question that kind of opens up. If they say, I don't fucking know, that's an honest answer, right? So now we're at a place of honesty. You don't know. Great.
Yeah.
You know, and then you kind of, you know, but I think my thing is this, like, stop being a pussy. Stop expecting everyone else to do the fucking work. Stop thinking that like you're better than you really are. Stop looking down on other people without a laugh, right? Like you could look down on people fucking around, but it's a joke. It's not like I'm fucking better than you. Like the truth of the matter is I don't think I'm better than anybody at anything. You know, there's always somebody else, like the Jocko Willink mentality that like that guy wakes up at 4:30 a.m. because he thinks other people are training to kill him and he wants to be better than they are, right? Like that's the fucking drive, bro. That's the same drive that's in every single UFC fighter's head. Wake up at 5, run a fucking hour. Boom. Because I know that dude that I'm going to beat in the next fight's probably not doing that. So it's like, you know, stop fucking asking for everything too. Like, who the fuck do you think you are? That, you know, that because when you ask for something, you're not recognizing what that other fucking person put in to develop it, to build it, to become it. So, you know, check yourself and be honest about what the fuck you're doing and stop expecting everyone to fucking give you everything. And in fact, why don't you work twice as hard and give something to a couple people? You know, like I wrote the other day that like the biggest flex is having someone tell you that you inspired them. Biggest fucking flex, bigger than anything else. That's, to me, that's like the illest shit ever, is when someone's like, oh fuck, man, like, you know, it was a lot when I had my other Instagram account, it was a lot more, but now it's like, you know, and that's what's funny too, is I'm on social media and I'm posting with the same mindset, but I'm posting to like 26 people. You know, it's like, it's not the same thing. So but it still gives me that same feeling of like, oh, I'm just getting my fucking thoughts out there. I'm kind of putting that shit out. So, but I'm going to change that. I'm actually going to build a stronger Discord and stronger Twitter, because it seems like I was saying earlier, like Twitter really doesn't stop people from putting stuff up there. And it's a broader community. It's not so specific to cannabis. We've all kind of migrated to Instagram for the visual component. Yeah. But the visual component exists in Twitter. Yeah. You know, it's just a different format. So I'm going to change some things up and direct things a little differently. But I'm going to continue to just be as accessible as possible. Like I try to, anytime anyone hits me up with a question, I try to be honest and take a few minutes to just, I remember when I was at High Times standing at fucking Aaron's booth trying to meet him and Don.
Yeah.
I remember, so many different situations like that, whether it was a dispensary owner or somebody that I was trying to get to know. And now I'm lucky enough to say that I'm really great friends with those people. And it's like, I know what that's like. So I always try to just remember that and give someone an opportunity or give my time to somebody and talk to someone or try to just help them navigate this insane fucking industry that we work in. It's very unforgiving. It's very thankless. It's really hard fucking work. And if it's not, you're not really in it. No disrespect to any bud tenders. I did that job and I learned from there and, developed Steep Hill and did those things and kind of, but I swung the fucking bat and I struck out a lot, so don't be afraid to strike out. Don't be afraid to look fucking stupid because you are stupid. There's someone smarter than you and they're younger than you and they're more talented than you are. And they're going to fucking eat your breakfast. Like that's just how it works. So you got to just, it's like you look at the jungle and you see the lion and he's a bad motherfucker, but then eventually he's like digging a hole to fucking die in, and the jackals get him every time. Like the one guarantee that you have is that you're going to fucking die. Like Jordan Peterson's quote, my favorite quote is, the universe has successfully killed every fucking thing it's ever created. And it will continue to do that.
Yeah. Until
you're gone. Like it always fucking wins. You know who beats the internet? The universe. That's who fucking beats the internet every day, all the time. Home run on top of home run on top of fucking home run.
I love that.
Addison, man, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's so good, man.
Really appreciate you. And every time I'm chatting with you, I always get like pumped up. Like, yeah, this is it.
Thank you, man. Same here, bro. I love your.
You got great energy, Addison. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Before we go, please tell the people what's the best way to get in touch with you right now?
You can email me at my email, which is addison@800lbsmantra.com, which is a great way to reach out. You can DM me on Instagram, which is Tyrone the Shorty Bull, which is my dog's memorial page who passed away. Or you can hit me on Twitter, which is I think Terpova on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or just go to our website. It's we have multiple websites. There's a website for Pyramid Pipeline.
Okay.
So if you're a grower, a breeder, or you're a farm or a manufacturer, you can just go to the pyramidpipeline.com. There's a onboarding there for all three. You put your information in, that alerts us, lets us know. We set up a phone call. We figure out, what it is, the services that you would suit within the pipeline itself.
Yeah.
If you're a breeder and you're trying to bring genetics in, there's a place for you to put your information there. If you're a farm that already has genetics and has some lists and you're looking to get your stuff out to the public, there's that. And then if you're a manufacturer who's looking to tap in, that's there as well. And the one thing about Pipeline that we didn't talk about is it's completely free to makers. There's no charge to makers. You don't pay a subscription to get these lists. You don't do any of that shit. I mean, we think that's kind of lame. We've had other guys look at our model and be like, oh, there's a million ways to monetize. Go monetize yourself and get the fuck out of here. Like we're not trying to drain every dollar out of somebody. We want to just make it so that it's fair, balanced, honest, wise, proven, true, shit that makes sense, that works. So you can get a hold of us on pyramidpipeline.com. You can go to 800lbsmantra.com and look at the company, look at what we do there. You can reach out to Eric at Chiba Chews, Chiba_Chews on Instagram, or Green Hornet, which is the other Chiba Chews account if you're looking for that stuff as well. It's if you're looking for Legends or any of the Legends stuff, we're about to launch the Legends website. You'll be able to, we're going to launch and we're going to have we'll have Legends shirts from the first Legends in Amsterdam. We'll have Legends shirts from the first Legends in Vancouver and from the first in Barcelona. So we're going to start with the firsts. We'll have pre-sale on those t-shirts. So we also do another thing that we do that I don't think a lot of people know. Because we're in cannabis, we see the limitations in our industry in regards to merch. And we've seen that, in a predatory way, the t-shirt sales concert guys have really gotten into cannabis, and they give a very, either that or like the promotions dudes that just give a very lackluster opportunity for merch and for product. So luckily we were able to develop a relationship with Matt Vincent, who owns Hate Brand, which is a really strong apparel brand in the action sports industry and for like, you know, fitness. And they do like Caffeine and Kilos and all these, they do like 7 or 8 brands, but they have access to really, really good products. Lower priced, they drop ship. Everything could be done through Spotify. You don't even have to hold any inventory. So we have another program called 800MM, which is 800 Merch Masters. Merch Masters is our partner for production. So any of these brands that we work with, you know, with Grandiflora, the other guy, you know, anyone, we're able to also help those guys produce their merch, design their merch, drop ship their merch, sell it, you know, get everything out there. So you'll see that's how we're fueling Legends. That's how we'll be fueling the other things that we're doing. And if anybody's interested in that, you can hit us up at any of those, you know, hit us up at 800poundsmantra.com, reach out to us, or I think we have a phone number. I just don't know what the fuck it is. Like, so it's such an old way of doing it.
It's old school.
Yeah, it's like, you know, or if you want and you're in Los Angeles and you want to meet with us, you can just DM us. We hold the schedule. We have, you know, I'm actually at our office right now. So, you know, we have a beautiful space here, which is right by the beach. We have a gorgeous dab bar, an amazing view, and we just set it up so that it's, you know, we have an open office here and we have meetings every single day, people coming through and working with us. So you can DM us if you want to set up a meeting. You can come meet with us. We'd love to hear more about your brand, or, you know, if you guys are looking for material because you're going to be launching a lab, let us know and we're more than happy to help. If you're a breeder and you're, you know, you got something special and you want to get it out there, you're launching a brand new seed company, you can hit us up and we'll give you have a conversation with you and talk about pipeline, see if we can get you in there with us. And yeah, so we're just, you know, always looking to make hash better, always looking to work with and collaborate and, you know, just do rad shit. I mean, that's kind of, I don't want to be bored. So, you know, trying to just stay busy and stay lit. So.
Absolutely, brother. Well, thank you so much for your time. And
thank you, Addison.
We appreciate you, man. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you guys, man. I appreciate you. And I want to thank all the Canadians who send all the love all the time. There seems to be quite a bit. It's crazy, man. There's so many Canadians that are like, I fucking love your brand. I love your stuff. I'm like, man, I was thinking about the other day. I'm like, I might have to retire in Canada. Just such a fucking pleasure. I mean, there's like beaches and shit there, right? Like I could go to Canada and fucking relax.
Yeah, we got some.
Yeah. Awesome, brother. You have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Addison.
See you guys. Be well. Thank you.